Okay, so kind of where we were leaving off, going back just a touch, I don't know why that's uh, there. Go away. Okay. There. All right. Sorry. I know most of you don't watch the YouTube videos, which I mean is fine. Like I wouldn't watch them either. Just kind of going through these. Since we're breaking down all of these macronutrients for bioenergetics, in particular glucose and fat, I really want us to know a little bit more about those. And glucose or glycolysis, it's relatively simple. So we're going to spend most of our time talking about that, but kind of what I wanted to cover before I let you out today is a little bit more about fats, but just as a bit of a review, monosaccharides, so that's a single glucose molecule, or I don't know, like fructose or galactose, those are those. Disaccharides, that's two of them conjoined together. So we have like sucrose, maltose, lactose. Those, I'm not going to test you on what's in those, like two glucoses being a maltose, that doesn't matter for me. Polysaccharides, that's most of them. Really what I'm the most concerned about is where we store these. There's two places in particular where we store carbohydrates, and like I know I talked about this before, but just as a refresher. So we store carbohydrates in the liver, right? We probably have the most dense storage of it within the liver, most dense there, and that effectively supplies our blood glucose. That's what regulates your blood glucose. So if you fast for a long period of time, then you can like deplete your liver glycogen stores pretty well. Actually in people with low carbohydrate diets, they end up having like somewhere like 30 grams or lower amounts of glucose or glycogen stored in their liver. And for most of us, bless you, it's typically around 100. Like that'll come up later on. But we also store carbohydrates in the muscles, muscle glycogen. So hopefully you understand all of that. I talked a little bit about like glycogen being multi-branched, and the structure effectively looking at this. And at the core of it is actually a protein, glycogenin. Not going to test you on that. I don't think it's abundantly important. I only talk about that because of my friend Cody. But fatty acids. Really, the reason why I think this is important is because almost everybody talks about fats with such a broad brush. And for those of you that know, like my dissertation, most of the research I've done is actually on like carbohydrate restriction or high-fat diets. So this is kind of an important thing to me because like not all fats are the same. But fatty acids or free fatty acids, this is typically how it's transported in the blood. We take it out of adipocytes or fat tissue, and that's actually called lipolysis overall. So like going through this a little bit more, triglycerides, this is our storage form. So we have like a glycerol backbone and 3 fatty acids along with it. Fatty acids are mostly what we do, like break that apart for energy. Phospholipids, that's not abundantly important for us in terms of like exercise adaptation. But steroids, I will talk about this more in the hormone chapters, but like not quite yet. So here, the lipid structure, something I want you to understand about this is this glycerol backbone, it's only got carbon and hydrogen in it. So the glycerol backbone, it's kind of interesting because whenever we tear this all apart, we can actually convert that into a carbohydrate. So like if someone's on like say an Atkins diet or something like that, we can actually convert that into glucose because there's certain cell types that need glucose, like red blood cells, for example, because they don't have mitochondria. But like these 3 fatty acids, I don't like how this is actually shown right here because this is showing like 3 saturated fatty acids. Now that's not how all things are most of the time. Like most of the time it would be like a saturated fat, a polyunsaturated fat, and a monounsaturated fat, or like 2 saturated fats or something like that. Does that make sense to everybody? Like take like dairy fats, for example. And like the predominant fat in dairy fats is a saturated fat, in particular palmitic acid and stearic acid. But like it actually has a lot of acid in there, which is a monounsaturated fat. So it's not quite 50-50, but it's like 60% of the fats in dairy are saturated fats, and the like other 40% or so, like I'm just guessing numbers off the top of my head, but it's close, are actually monounsaturated fats, which are the same types of fats in olive oil. And has anyone ever heard olive oil is good for you? Right? Now, like it likely is. Like olive oil or oleic acid, like that's where it gets its name from. It actually reduces your blood pressure a little bit. So like dairy products actually have a lot of olive oil in them, right? Is that interesting to anybody? Yeah. So really, like the main reason to like not eat dairy is if you're lactose intolerant, which I'm very lactose tolerant, so I don't care. But here, just like a couple of things. The types of fatty acids, I want you to see the nomenclature for them and understand how this is done. And like the carbon length, I think, is really important, and it's really important for how we burn them for energy. So typically, we have something called long-chain fatty acids. So LCFA, all capital. I would know that. That's the main one that we do. We also have medium-chain fatty acids. I'm just going to write all this down. What is it? It's I think it's 8 to 12. It's gosh, normally it's like 14 plus. I don't know, like 24 or higher. And then right, less than? Is that right? My dad's a math teacher, so I always had difficulty with this. Okay, so overall these, we have like long chain fatty acids, and like don't take that number too seriously, like the 14 plus. It depends on what textbook you actually read. Like it's just more than 12. That's basically it. Like I mean, there's actually like really weird metabolism of like 13 chain fatty acids and 17 chain fatty acids, which I would love to talk about, but I think would bore the hell out of all of you. But long chain fatty acids, that's the main one that we get in our diet. Main one that we like eat, like olive oil, avocados, like whatever hippie stuff that you people eat these days. Medium chain fatty acids, this is like typically somewhere between like 6 to 12, some things will say, but 8 to 12 is about what I like to think about, because those would be the most common ones that we would eat. Mostly from like coconut oil. Does anyone eat coconut oil? Or like coconut oil? Okay, like I mean, it's I don't know, it's really good for like skincare and using your hair and all sorts of things, but it tastes great as well. That one, pretty unique. You almost have to seek it out to consume it. Short chain fatty acids. This is almost always created in your large intestine from the fermentation of soluble fiber. So there is some indication that people who have higher amounts of circulating short chain fatty acids are a little bit healthier, but it's normally related to them being vegans or vegetarians and eating a lot more fiber. So that's, and like there's numerous things that vegans and vegetarians do that is really healthy. But right there, I just want you to know those three things like as it stands right now. But like up here, the nomenclature for it. Stearic acid, that's a saturated fatty acid. So that 18, what is it? Is that a colon or semicolon? Whatever it is. The two dots that are sideways, that look like sideways eyes. 18, that's how many carbons are in it. And the carbons is really important. And that 0 right there, that is the amount of double bonds within this. So with like saturated and unsaturated fatty acids, that's going to be really important for us to know, like the order of like how they're burned for fuel, because they're all very different, right? So let's move on to this next one. Oleic acid, what I was talking about, olive oil. That's what that is, oleic acid, 18-1. So the one right there, and like I don't find it super important for you to remember 18-1 because, well, like I know it, but it's not important for you. That one means that there's a single double bond in there. So if there's a single double bond, we call that a monounsaturated fatty acid. Is everyone good with this? Now, there's an omega end and an alpha end. So over here on the left side, almost always, is what's called the omega end. And over here, that's the alpha end. Now, the alpha end, not important. I'm never going to ask you about that ever again because I think it's ridiculous. But omega end, this is really important. So like, let's count these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Has anyone ever heard of omega-9 fatty acids? It's kind of like all the rage in like, I don't know, like stimulating health things or whatever. So oleic acid, if you ever want to sound really smart, like olive oil, it's rich in omega-9 fatty acids. So what that omega-9 is the amount of carbon bonds from the omega end. So like if you didn't see how I counted that, let's look at that again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Everyone see that? Right? That's cool, right? The reason I'm talking about this is like various like fitness and nutrition gurus talk about this stuff, and I just want you to know what they're saying, right? This palmito oleic acid, it's really cool. It's pretty much only found in avocados and macadamia nuts, and there is one study in particular that like there were like damaged nephrons, which no, it wasn't nephrons. It was beta pancreatic cells. So like in a cell culture, and they put a bunch of palmito oleic acid on it, and the like beta cells that were like somewhat deranged or broken, somehow the palmito oleic acid rejuvenated them in some way. So if anybody has like type 2 diabetes that you know of, there is at least some molecular reasoning on like a very reductionist way to think that maybe more palmito oleic acid might be able to start reversing their diabetes a little bit by like repairing their beta cells of their pancreas. Is that interesting to anybody, right? So like a lot of people have diabetes, right? That's like it's an American problem, I think, right? But yeah, 16.1. So this one right here, I think it's actually an omega-7 if I remember right. I'd have to count it out, but yeah, so that's an omega-7 fatty acid. Here, let's talk about a couple more. So omega-3s. Omega-3s and omega-6s. Technically, these two are the only two essential fatty acids that anybody could ever hope to consume. So this one right here, linolenic, and I'm probably saying that wrong because L's are very difficult for me to say, 18,3, meaning that there's 18 carbons, and there's three double bonds. So if there's more than one double bond, that means it's a polyunsaturated fat. So poly means more than one, right? Why not? Well, poly means more than one. And omega-3, that means that the first one, right, at least in this case, the first one is on the third double carbon bond. Right? Everyone good with this? Or not good? Okay, yes. So 18,3, 18 carbons. There's 3 double bonds, right? And then the omega-3 notation, like omega-3 fatty acids are good for you, so-called, right? Whenever it says that something is omega-3, that means the first double bond, counting from the omega end, is on the third double carbon bond. Right? Everyone go with this? Right? Now that makes sense? Right? Okay. Now, like, there's other ones that are like a lot more probably important, like EPA being a 20 carbon, and like DHA being a 22 carbon. I think DHA is 22 carbon. I can't remember exactly. But then here's the linoleic one. This is the only essential omega-6 fatty acid that we could ever like hope to consume. So both of these are really high in various plant products like soybeans, like walnuts, like flax seeds, chia seeds. That's where a lot of these are actually found. There's some in like there's a little bit in dairy and like various other things, but the longer chain, like omega-3s, are normally found in fish. So like a 20 and 22 carbon omega-3 fatty acid, normally in like salmon or sardines or whatever people like to eat. Here, medium chain. So here it says 6 to 12. Just, I don't know, like know that it's less. It's somewhere within that range. Capric, or caprylic, capric, and there's actually one more that I want you to know about. It's a 12-carbon one called lauric acid. Lauric acid. So all of these, man, I've got like no time. That's okay. That's okay. I'm just going to go through this kind of fast. So Cap, is anyone in here like a Capricorn? Right? Anybody? Okay, so like recently I had birthdays, I guess, right? So Capricorn, so these fats, these two, the 8-carbon and 10-carbon, were actually first discovered in like goat milk. That's why it's called capric and caprylic, right? And I think it's cool, right? All right. Now this lauric one, 12 carbons. So 12 semicolon 0. That one is the main medium chain fat in coconut or palm oil. Interesting thing about these medium chain fatty acids, to get into a mitochondria, they don't need transporters. They can osmotically just get into them. That's going to be important for like how they're burned later. And that's all the time I have. All right. Have a good weekend. I'll see you soon. Hopefully you think about Capricorns and fats all weekend.